And now we can go to another interesting part of 3ds Max, that is using shapes. Shapes are drawings in 3ds Max, and in order to create them we have to go to the Create tab, we have to go to our second family where we see shapes, and we find all these tools that are about making objects that are vector shapes. Most of them are parametric shapes, and line is the one that is not parametric, and we will go there in a minute. What it means parametric? Parametric means simply that if I draw a circle, I will make this vector shape, and if I go to the Modify tab, I will find parameters that are changing the aspect of my circle. If I make a rectangle, same thing, I left click and drag, and then I will see that by going to the Modify tab, this shape is managed by parameters. Say I can type 15, type 30, and these will be numbers that will change the aspect of my parametric shape. The one that is not parametric is the one that is simply called line, but in 3ds Max this kind of shape is more correctly called editable spline. When I create a shape by using line, what I have to do is simply left click and release, left click and release, and each time that I create a vertex, I make my shape becoming longer, and then I have two ways to complete my shape. First is by right clicking once, and I will leave this as a open freeform shape, or if I click, and then without any snap, I just move my mouse more or less over first clicked vertex, 3ds Max will ask me if I want to close my spline, and if I click yes, I will finish the creation of my editable spline, and at the same time I will have as a result a closed shape. Then by closed it means that first and last vertices are basically fused together. And next step will be understanding how to modify an editable spline. An editable spline has no parameters, while it has these three selection modes. By clicking first button, we enable vertex editing, and we can move, for example, vertexes here and there. By clicking second button, we enable segment editing, and we can select one or more than one segment, and we can change them as we like. We can also rotate them or scaling them, while we can't scale or rotate vertexes. Last editing mode is called spline, and this involves the entire shape. So we can scale it, rotate it, move it, and another thing that happens when we select one of these three editing buttons is that according to the one that we are selecting, if we go a little bit down into the Modify tab, we will discover that there are a lot of tools that we can use in combination with the editing mode that we have selected. and not all of them are always available. So this list of available buttons, those that have white text, is when we have clicked vertex. But if I click segment and I go down, I will discover that most of my tools have been grayed out, and I have a lot smaller selection of tools that I can use in combination with segments. And the same, more or less, will happen if I select spline mode. So let's discover, in order to start working with 3ds Max, let's discover which are most interesting tools that you may use in combination with vertex, in combination with segment, or in combination with spline. This is a shorter selection of available tools, and I will start by telling you that with vertex, first interesting tool that you can use is called refine. So when you click refine, you can basically left click with your mouse along your shape, and you can basically add additional vertices. If you left click on the tool, you close it, and also an interesting way instead to remove unwanted vertices is by simply selecting them and using the keyboard key that is delete. What we have then as other interesting tool, we have a tool that is called fillet, and this tool basically works in this way. You click the button, you left click on the vertex, and then by leaving your left button pressed, you move your mouse up and down, and you basically make a round corner from a sharp one. You can also use chamfer, as it has a similar function, while it makes instead a flat cut on a corner, so it basically chops a corner like that. Then we have an interesting button that is called weld, and the way that weld works is basically if you have certain vertices and you want to combine them together, you can try by clicking weld, and at the very first time it looks like it doesn't work, simply because weld has a threshold distance that is this weird value next to it. So if you select vertices and then you want to weld them together, so you want to combine them together into one vertex only, before clicking the button you need to increase the distance that it should be in between them. And because, for example, we know that we have set the grid line into steps of 20 centimeters, it's easy to imagine that the distance between these vertices will be something close to 50 centimeters. So I will type 50. But I can also see that if these are 20, 40, 60, 80, the distance in between these vertices is more than 50 centimeters. So this value allows also weld not to combine vertices that you may have selected by mistake. So if I select these vertices that are very far from each other and now I click weld, you will see that weld will combine only those vertices that has the distance smaller than the threshold. Or you can check it here as well. If I select these and by mistake I select that, by clicking weld, only those vertices that were closer than 50 centimeters have been combined together, while this one that was further, it is not been modified. There's another interesting tool, an interesting button that is called break, that is a little bit above, that is the exact opposite of weld. So if I break a vertex, I have to select the vertex before, then I click break, and now if I show you what happens if I select move, look, I click move, and if I move my vertex, I will discover that what was a single vertex that was closing my shape now has been turned into two broken vertices. And now if I want to join them together, I have two slightly different options. One is, again, I could use weld if I want just to combine them together. But last tool that I want to show you into the menu that you have available when you work with Vertex is the tool that is called Connect. Connect is a tool that works only when you have broken vertices, and what it does is it allows you to create this missing line in between two broken vertices so that you can connect them as the name of the tool says. We have almost done, because last feature that I want to show you about editable spline vertices is that last thing that you can do is you can right click on your vertices, and here into the menu that appears, so when you right click, first of all you have a shorter selection of tools that we have seen before. So we have connect, we have refine, we have break, we have weld, and one day we will see that this menu can be also modified and customized by applying and by adding here only those tools that you will use more frequently. But at least if you go into the left upper quad of this menu, you can find these interesting options called Bezier corner, or smooth. These are vertex types. For example, this one is a corner, so you have your shape with these sharp edge and with these straight lines, but if I right click and I can see that is a corner, I can change it to smooth, and this will immediately become a curvy shape, that is a curvy corner with curvy edges. I can make something similar by right clicking and by changing my vertex to Bezier, but I will have not only the possibility to make my shape curvy, I can also move this handle to change the aspect of the curve, and I can have something that is in between a corner and a Bezier by right clicking and selecting Bezier corner, where I have a corner with two half handles that I can modify in an independent way. They can be moved, can be scaled, they can be rotated. So when I rotate these, I'm not rotating vertex itself while I'm rotating handles of my Bezier corner. And these are most interesting tools that you may find into vertex edit mode. Let's go to edge editing mode. So let's see what happens when you click segment editing mode. First of all, when I select a segment, first simple thing that I can notice is that if I hit delete, I will delete the segment and I will also break the shape. So it is not like when I select a segment, a vertex, and I delete it. Second thing that I notice is that there are a lot less available tools, and in general the one that is most useful is the one that is called divide. So if I click divide, the number inside tells me how many vertices I want to put along my edge, and if I select, let's say, 3, click divide, and now I have 3 additional vertices inside my selected segment. And the same thing can be done even if I select more than one segment, but this tool works segment by segment. So if I select 2 segments and I click 3 here and then divide, inside each of my selected segments I will find 3 new equally spaced vertices. And we can quickly go to Spline editing mode. When I click Spline editing mode, I have other available tools that are pretty interesting as well. For example, I have a tool that is Outline that allows me to create a parallel copy of my selected spline, and I can even type a value if I want, but basically it quickly works like this. I select my spline, I left click and drag, and according to where I move my mouse, I will have my offset of my selected spline. What is also interesting is that this feature works no matter if your spline is open or closed. So if I have a shape that is already closed and I go to the Modify tab and I select Spline Editing Mode and then I click Outline, this will perfectly work as well, as many times that I want, and it basically creates more splines inside my editable spline. Then I have Mirror, and as the name says, Mirror allows me to quickly make a mirror transformation horizontally, vertically, or by using both axes. But what is also interesting is that, so let me delete a few of these splines, I can even select the option called Copy, and when I click Mirror, instead of transforming my selected spline, it will create a mirrored copy of my selected spline or splines inside my shape, and I can have all these combination of symmetrical splines inside my single shape. The reason why I'm also keeping these shape intersecting each other is because I want to show you next interesting button that you find immediately below Mirror, that is called Trim. Because if I have intersecting splines, I can use Trim to cut parts that are intersecting each other. Can zoom in a little bit here, and I can have this as a final result. There is only one interesting information that you need to know about Trim. That is, when you click Trim and you create these new vertices where intersections of your splines, those vertices are not welded. So if you want to have a perfectly closed shape, take care, because these vertices are broken vertices. So whenever you use trim, you need also to use weld in order to select your cut vertices. Let's make a smaller threshold, like 10 centimeters, and click weld. So now none of my vertices is broken anymore. Probably these, probably that. Let's weld them exactly, and now I have my perfectly closed shape. Okay? Next, we will see why we can create shapes in 3ds Max, because with shapes we can make a lot of operations. So, if you find this video interesting or useful, leave a like and let me know with a comment, and why not make me questions for other videos or suggestions, and why not subscribe for more videos like this. And as usual, have fun, bye!